Well, I think there's a few things that us parents should be clear about before we put our kids in sports. And really, even before we put them in sports, I think the very fundamental first thing is what are our values? Right at the end of my career, I started something with a good friend of mine called the Nike Elite Camp. And that was basically a select camp for the top high school players in the country in the Philippines that we put on for free for them. And we trained them for 6 days and put them up overnight and got after it. And that was a lot of fun. From that sprung something called the NBTC, that was overlapping when I went from playing to coaching. So I was an assistant coach in the professional league in the Philippines called the PBA. When Coach Eric Altamirano and I started something called the NBTC, with the idea being that we needed to spend more time impacting the kids than just the 6 days, and we needed to impact more kids. So we ended up starting to train the kids in the three biggest cities in the country, which then turned out to a league, which turned out to a national league, which became the national high school championships in the Philippines, which became an international tournament. And I think at this point in time, we have about 15,000 kids who play each year in the NBTC that culminates in a large international tournament in Manila with teams from the US, Canada, Europe, UAE, Qatar, New Zealand, and Australia. And I might be missing some countries that come in and participate in that tournament. So that was one of our babies. That's still going on now, and that's for high school kids. And then during that time that the NBTC was growing, I went from assistant coach to lead assistant coach to becoming a head coach. And I was a head pro basketball coach in the Philippines for 5 years. Never won a championship, made it to the finals 5 times, but didn't get over the hump. Um, and in the process, got to be an assistant coach with the national team. Got to travel and play in Europe a few times and or coach the team we played in Europe a few times and had a lot of fun with that and came in second in FIBA Asia and I got to participate in the Olympic qualifying tournament. So that's been kind of my basketball background. And then from there, I have three kids that I love. And I married an amazing woman who has her values clearly in place. And one of the things I loved about her is I knew right away when I met her that she was going to be a great mom. And so we have extremely linked values and just being married to Michelle and raising our kids and watching them grow in life and youth sports being one of the avenues for their growth. Um, all of that has led me to be a co-author in this book with a buddy I knew in the Philippines who played college basketball in the US and is the principal of a high school. So yeah, that's kind of my background and what led me to being one of the authors of Guiding Your Child's Athletic Journey. I think there's a few things that us parents should be clear about before we put our kids in sports. Um, and really, even before we put them in sports, I think the very fundamental first thing is what are our values? So if you're in a marriage, if you're married, or if you're a single parent, what are my values? But what are our values going to be as a family? And if you're putting them in sports in a way that kind of counters your values or might be kind of hedging it a little bit, maybe getting to the edge or maybe kind of stretching it, then maybe we need to reevaluate either why we're doing what we're doing or if our values are actually really what we value. So that's an important thing is what really are your values? And, I'm not here to tell anybody what their values should be. That's not the point. Your values are your values, but getting clarity around those is really important. The second is what's the goal? What's the end game here? What is it that we're actually shooting for? And I think again, defining that is important. And as you start to define that, hopefully thinking about your kid and not just your own desires for your kid. right? So okay, what do we want to have happen here? What do we think they want to have happen here? And we're the parents, we need to parent. But, you know, what's our goal for this? And I think sometimes if our goal is Olympic athlete too early, that's just kind of crazy. If our goal is maybe, okay, we want them to learn, play, have some fun and see what happens and, participate and develop a little commitment, some character and some stuff, then, that's kind of more in line with like my types of goals, which yours don't have to be. Yours can be totally different. But getting clarity around that, what is my goal? What is my purpose? And then you'll really know when you go forward, like what does success look like? I think a lot of times parents, when we're at sporting contests, it can get pretty intense because, there's for a lot of us, there's really nobody that we love more than our kids. And they're so precious and we nurture them and we protect them and we kind of for a lot of us, we really make our lives revolve around them. And so you're watching them in the sport and you've got all this emotion. So if you don't have the goal, then you don't know what success looks like. And stuff can feel really weighty and you can be reactive instead of responsive. So getting on the front end of things and defining maybe what your values are, right? Which your goals are, what success looks like, where you're trying to get to. I think there's a lot to go into, but if you do those things and you have clarity, and again, if you're married, if you do this with your spouse and sit down and maybe have some discussion around that, that would be huge because a lot of times I think even as married couples, we can sometimes assume like, oh yeah, we think like this. And then you talk to your spouse, you're like, oh gosh, we don't think like this. I think like this, and she thinks like this. We need to talk so we're on the same page. So having these intentional and sometimes a little bit of hard discussions, man, they bear fruit. They really bear fruit. And so, yeah, values, goals, and success, what those look like.